This room over here is dealing mainly with care work. So we have touched on issues that domestic workers are dealing with. We've touched on issues that mainly black women are facing in their daily lives in terms of the different forms of care work that they do, in terms of how they're actually anchoring the society that we live in, enabling our society to reproduce themselves on a daily basis. Over here, we have our first work, which is called Singalibali Kuba Sizalwa Ngubani, and it is a work that is reflecting just what I've mentioned, the different ways in which black women particularly are overstretched, whether they are healthcare workers, whether they are heading their households, whether they are doing a lot of work within rural areas or rural communities. And it really speaks to the intersectionality of inequality as well, and unpaid care work, and how it hasn't been recognized really by government, how it hasn't been recognized by policymakers in terms of how much it contributes, how much black women, how much women contribute towards upholding society and making it easier for people to actually live their lives, to go to work, to run companies. So I think it's a powerful work as well. Also drawn some quotes from the report, which tell us a bit more about gendered economic roles and how they contribute to universal and long-lasting occupational segregation. So we still see how inequality persists in terms of how economic roles continue to be gendered. And there has to be a lot of change that comes about with that. But this is the type of work that Oxfam, as well as other social justice movements, are working towards. What we see in this space here is a work by Thandiwe Shabalala. It's called Strapped South African Black Well-Organized Women Essentials. So this is a work that she did back in 2014, if I'm not mistaken, and it was actually a graphic that she did as a sort of response to a situation she was experiencing at the time. She is a black woman, she is an illustrator, and she found herself so frustrated just one day thinking about how she wasn't able to actually get to what she needed to do because she couldn't afford certain things. So this particular work touches on income inequality specifically, which is as a result of social inequality. So a lot of women find themselves having to actually be the breadwinner in the home, for instance. They find themselves having to do a lot of care work, but yet they're facing challenges which aren't seen behind the scenes, so to speak. They cannot afford toilet paper, for instance. Some women cannot afford shampoo. Some women can't afford dental floss, as she illustrates here. So they are forced to improvise or to reuse certain things a number of times. And it doesn't only end with products, but we've seen a lot of people, not just women, dealing with having to reuse, for instance, resources such as water a number of times just due to a lack of access to certain basic necessities. This space over here is a sound installation called the Made series. So the title was also How Heroines Are Made. That's what really drew me to the work. It's actually a podcast by Lilian as well as Tuliza Cindy. And they were hosting this show on Cliff Central a few years ago. And what they would do is they would actually invite domestic workers to be part of various conversations that they had about the work that they do. They raised a lot of important issues which they felt they couldn't really express on other platforms, which I found quite interesting, and I thought it was an important part to have as part of this conversation, since we are talking about domestic work as well. A lot of women who are doing a lot of care work in various homes. So it's quite an interesting sound installation. You can have a listen.
I like to be called Langa. I prefer that because the domestic maid cleaner is a very strong word and it doesn't feel right. Even where I come from, they ask me what job I'm doing. Obviously, you can't lie to them. You tell them mostly it's the kitchens. They ask us, "Nisebenza kuphi?" Ema kitchen. They know what you do in the kitchens. But sometimes you feel embarrassed to tell them what you're doing because that's not what you really wanted to become.
I mean, this is really interesting to me, and it brings up this other question about how you guys got into this kind of work. Maybe you can just discuss that a little bit with us.
Yeah.
I think for myself, it was like an accident or something I was put into it. That wasn't my dream. When I was like at school, I always dreamed like, when I finish school, I would like to work as a medical aid or a nurse in the medical department or in the police force. Those were the two things I wanted to do. But like if you come from a poor background, sometimes parents don't have enough money to put you up to do those courses. Then, my aunt then just decided that I should do this domestic work. Just for a few months or what, but that was the beginning of it until now.
This work over here by Merisibande is called They Don't Make Them Like They Used To, and it is part of this exhibition courtesy of her gallery, Smack Gallery, as well as her, Merisibande, thank you very much. A lot of her work centers around just speaking about the issues that women face, but more specifically domestic workers. So she has this figure called Sophie that she's been developing over a number of years. It gained a lot of prominence from 2009. And she modeled it around her own grandmother's experience as a former domestic worker. And she created these beautiful statues that were really just honoring her grandmother's work and the work that she did in terms of being able to raise a family on that domestic worker's salary, and despite the challenges that she may have been facing even at work. But it's really a testament to the power of the imagination. I was drawn to it particularly because of the Superman sign there that she sewed onto what she's sewing there, the figure is sewing there. So I think it's quite powerful there. And I think it's a true reflection of the superhero role that a lot of women face, especially domestic workers, who often do a lot of work that goes unthanked quite often. This space over here is dedicated to the Care for Carers campaign, which is an initiative that is led by Oxfam South Africa, as well as some of their allies, such as the Young Nurses in the Trade Union, as well as other healthcare workers organizations. It's really ensuring that healthcare workers receive the care that they also need in order to be able to care for others, but also making sure that the organizations that are profiting from this sector recognize that and that people are put before profits. I think that's an important message that came through, particularly from the workers who actually have been protesting during COVID-19, the pandemic that's been going on, and they've been challenging the various stakeholders, such as the private sector, challenging them to say their needs need to be taken care of as well in order for them to be able to take care of people who are ill. So even though they are frontline workers, it's important to consider them as people first before anything else. We've actually used some of the posters that they were using in the protest. We've used some of the items that they actually used to stage this protest in front of one of the private hospitals. So what we wanted to depict here is actually the different types of care work that many black women face in South Africa that they do. So for example here, this shows that 4 out of every 10 black women in South Africa are heading households. Over there, we see our woman outstretched, showing a symbol referring to healthcare workers, such as yourself. And over here, we show the different types of work that they are doing as well, especially in the rural areas. And there at the top, we're showing the intersectionality of inequality as well as unpaid care work. So as a healthcare worker, how do you see yourself represented in a piece like this? What does it mean to you to be outstretched in so many ways as a healthcare worker? Can you just tell us a bit more about that?
Okay. As a care worker, I think it's a calling, because when you work with patients, you must go extra miles ukuthi uncede abantu, because if it's a calling, I think you'll do it from deep down from your heart. As a woman, a black woman, We are working very hard, and it's so painful when we see our people dying in front of our eyes, trying to help them. But some other times it's difficult because some of the other people, they don't want to take treatment. They take it as it's a play. If usinikele njengomuntu omnyama or umama, sisebenza kanzima, we are working very hard. We make sure that our people, they adhere to what we are trying to tell them. You see, we are stretching our hands whereby we don't even reach where we want to reach. During COVID-19, there were many problems. We ran short of PPEs. PPEs were just located for the nurses and the doctors. We as care workers, we've been given cloth mask. And only one cloth mask, and according to my understanding, you must wear a cloth mask for a day. So they give us one cloth mask for the whole week. You see, it was a very big challenge because this COVID-19, nobody knew about it because if you can see, even at the parliament, it was too much. They didn't give us the material to work with. And you see at the private hospitals, they treated our people very bad. You see, we care workers, we were given only these aprons and those clothes masks only. We didn't have gloves. We didn't have the surgical masks. The surgical masks, they said they're only going to give to the doctors and the nurses. All this stuff, we were running short of them. So what we were going to protest there, we wanted them to put people before the profit. How am I going to work without wearing this, knowing that I'm going to work for COVID? Am I going to work without wearing these proper PPEs? No, the only thing that they care about is just to care about money. They work for money. They don't care about people. And we only care about these people because without these people, there was not going to be food in my table. I don't have time to spend with my children because of I'm willing to work with my whole heart. But look at our colleagues. Look at our colleagues. Look, where did they end? They end up dying, going to graves because we wanted to help patients. But we as care workers, nobody who cares about us. I'm very sorry about that. The COVID-19 have changed our lives. Everything by the COVID-19, it is changed. But since from the day one, we were working there. Whether we like it or not, we are afraid or not. But look at our colleagues today, where they are lying.
So I think the big message is put people before
First.
profits,
Yes,
right? Put
yes.
people first before profits. I think
Yes.
that's the big message here. Thank you so much for all of that, for giving us more context, better understanding, more insight into everything. It's heartbreaking, really, but we hope that with this messaging, with your insight, your valuable input into this, we'll get more change actually happening.